Welcome to yet another episode of how we can be able to turn challenges into opportunities. And today we're going to look at how can environmental solutions become the arsenal to turn challenges into opportunities that will create jobs for our youth across the world and more so in the African continent. Today we're going to look at the intrinsic values that each and every one of us need to be able to make a difference in each of our community, in moving the needle forward as we drive transformational development for people and planet. And today we have a special guest, and that guest is Robert Mungiri. In this conversation with Robert today, and as well as yourself, because you'll be throwing in some comments, we're going to look at what can we as individuals do. And in the course of taking environmental action and also climate change action, how can we be able to turn these challenges into opportunities and create the needed jobs and create wealth opportunity, put more money in more pocket, and at the same time, ensure that we can then be able to put food on the table. With me in studio now is Robert. Robert, welcome. How are you doing
Ah,
today?
thank,
Great to have you here.
ah, thank you very much, Dr. Mulang. Thank you, sir. It's a great pleasure to join you for the conversation today, and it's much humbling. So thank you very much. I'm glad to be
Excellent.
here.
No, it's a great pleasure to have you. This is a conversation, and welcome to the Innovative Volunteerism Spot. And here we are going to have a conversation today. Our viewers are eagerly waiting to hear from us on exactly what this animal called climate change is all about. We've seen droughts and flood cyclones, and we see these hurricanes that are plaguing millions of people and plunging them into suffering. So, in the mind of someone in a community sitting in a village in Kisumu or in Taita Taveta or in Douala in Yaoundé or in Bamenda in Cameroon or in Lagos or in Abuja in Nigeria or in Nasarawa or in Lomé, Togo, what does this changing climate present? Is it only a challenge or it's also an opportunity? Break it down for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Actually, climate change is both a challenge and the solutions to it now are present opportunity. The challenges are clear for all to see. When the yields continue to drop year after year in a farm, in a village, that's a challenge. When we see less rain, I mean, there's a time I heard you speak in an interview say that
Mm,
actually the trend is such that over the past, from the 60s to
right.
date, we have seen a declining precipitation of a rate of decades. So what happens is, in the 60s we had like a drought in 20 years. Then it comes down to a drought every 10, then
Right.
every 5, then a drought every year. So these are challenges that are being seen day in, day out, and they're affecting the ordinary people down at the ground level. But those who present solutions to these challenges then tap into into opportunities that come from those solutions and create opportunities for others to tap
Mm,
into. So what we see is a chain reaction of solutions in through the climate action lens, and I believe that's what we need to talk about more. So, for example, if the application, let's say the declining precipitation, as you have talked about, that's an opportunity to say how can the little precipitation that is already there be harvested more and then deployed at during the drought times. So how do we handle that dichotomy of increasing droughts, but at the same time increasing
mm.
intensity of rains? So those dichotomies, the people who come up with solutions to those dichotomies now are the ones that create opportunities, and those opportunities are now tapped by other people. So it becomes a chain reaction of solutions, and I believe we'll talk more of that as we continue.
Excellent, Bob. And I think that is really clear, and it provides that perspective that instead of just looking at climate change as a challenge, it provides a lot of opportunities. Now, when it comes to the opportunities perspective, climate change is a cross-cutting issue, and a lot of people will say, "Well, when we were growing up, we were plagued or we encountered droughts and floods, but today we still encounter the same. Why should we worry about something that we used to see as we were growing up?" And why I'm bringing up this question is that when people become accustomed to something, it means nothing to them. Yes, they are not happy about it, but they are not unhappy to create a solution for it. What is becoming of this, and how can we address this apathy?
Yes, sure. Actually, the apathy arises from the feeling of hopelessness. You know,
Right.
there's a time I believe a report was done showing that among the youth, for example, there's a lot of
Exactly.
apathy going on with the narrative of climate action, which mostly focuses on the negatives, not the opportunities, focuses on the liabilities, not the investments that can come out of climate action. And
Right.
that is the cause of apathy. So someone will ask themselves, okay, so when I look at news all the time, what I see is the only news that I see are those of a flood happening in a certain place, of a drought, and of people suffering. But what we don't see is that in between those floods or in between those, there are people who are actually doing things that are offering reprieve and creating opportunities for themselves. For example, I think out of the work we are seeing of young people doing across Africa, we saw, for example, during the recent emergency that was going on, the COVID emergency, that application of climate change solutions actually resulted in people getting actually earning more through increasing the shelf life of their harvest and having them to leverage better in the market because uh, they can now market and bargain for better prices without the fear of losing their harvest. So what we saw was a solution coming in. We saw, for example, also during that time that 12% of the the solutions of the solutions that were put forward to address different aspects of the emergency actually came from Africa. But these are things that were never brought to the fore
Right.
in terms of the need.
So
So what I'm saying is the narrative. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the
so the
narrative.
narrative projects
Yes.
liability instead of
Absolutely.
projecting opportunities, and that has been a very big issue because if you building on that point that you have put up in the 2000s to 2011, the cliche of Africa rising, especially culminating in 2013, was a narrative that was embraced without critiquing how come Africa is rising and we still have high levels of poverty. How come Africa is rising and we still have high levels of unemployment? How come Africa is rising and the levels of food insecurity keep getting exacerbated each and every day? And so the point you are making is quite very, very clear that sometimes we do not craft the narrative that makes meaning to the common person on the ground and is realistic, but we embrace narratives sometimes that are more just palatable when it comes to speaking rather than matching with reality. And so this is a very big issue. So to what extent do you think the narrative of development generally in the African continent is an issue?
I'll just pivot back to what you say. In the 2010s, Africa was declared a rising continent. 5 years later, what do you hear? We never hear of that. Instead, we hear of sound bites here and there that maybe the continent is limping. So what happened is that the falling commodity prices at that time, which were actually the peg that was used to say that Africa is rising, then the reality hit that indeed you cannot talk of headline growth, growth that only touches the few, the 3% who are, let's say, engaged in the extractive sector and call that growth. That cannot really be growth. Growth actually happens when the quality of life of the people at the grassroots or the people who are the majority players of an economy, in this case, the informal sector in Africa, when they are booming, what we usually hear of the middle class. The middle class is what usually drives the economy, and in this case, in Africa, the middle class should be the informal sector. So as they thrive, then the economy grows. So what we need more is the implementation or actions that or incentives that target what is already working with these informal actors, so that it can grow and it can be expanded, and out of the expansion, then
Right.
real intrinsic growth can be experienced. Headline growth is fickle and usually is driven mostly by narratives that are not really realistic when it
Yeah,
comes to
you've
the
mentioned something that
majority.
we need to build on what works
Yes.
and frame our narratives around reality, not these elusive narratives that sometimes are more palatable just in terms of speaking or talking. I would like to play a clip for 1 minute here, and I would like to get your perspective on that, especially on some of these actions that mothers are actually undertaking in communities. And I would like to get your perspective on that.
Has benefited you personally?
Dryers can benefit me or benefit the group
Yeah.
by using the dryer,
Yeah.
you have flour and you'll be able to sell to many people.
Yes.
And by so doing, it will be a source of income
Yeah.
in the group.
All right. So you're saying that when you dry, you get to add value to whatever you have dried. You make flour, and you also increase your sources of income.
Yes.
You have mentioned that you're in a group. So in groups, normally we have some sort of cooperatives, but we call them chamas. As a chama that has been working together in drying, how would you say that that chama has helped you?
The chama can be a benefit to the members of the group
Yeah.
by, without the dryers,
Yeah.
we do not have anywhere to dry our crops.
Yes.
But using the dryers is a bit cheaper,
Yeah.
and it's a way of correcting these foods in those varieties by adding the food values.
Yeah.
Also, on the other hand, it has added some value to farmers
Yeah.
because the crop like cassava,
Yeah.
we do plant it, and in our area, it doesn't fetch much money.
Yeah.
But from the since these things were started,
Yeah.
people are bringing cassava here,
Yeah.
and it's being bought, and they
Yeah.
are happy.
Okay, so as
Yeah.
a group, you guys also bring your resources together to help each other.
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
I'm Teresia Wangui Kenya from Kaki Water Project.
Yes, Bob, these are practical solutions, practical climate action solutions. The communities are benefiting as a result of these solutions decentralized to them through the concept of innovative volunteerism, which is happening within the Abavosa framework. These are realistic actions that are benefiting community. They're the ones giving first-hand information there. Why are narratives not framed around these workable solutions in the continent? What is preventing logic and reason to be embraced rather than talking about issues as if they have never happened, they do not exist, when practically we are seeing that just decentralized simple climate action solution to a mother in a community changes her life? That's what we just heard from the mother there, explaining how that dryer have changed their life. What is holding us back?
Yes, I think there's what they call the mainstream. So the mainstream of climate action has always been, I think going just back to what we said before, has always been on projecting liability. That is what seems to sell, projecting liability. However, the alternative we are seeing now is that climate action can actually be a source of opportunities, and opportunities that really matter. And the only way that can be is when it is decentralized in a way that makes sense to the majority who are in the informal sector and the people on the ground, our mothers in the fields out there. When it makes sense to them, then we now are moving towards where we need to be, which is climate action being a source of opportunities and not projecting liability. And in this case, the only sense that needs to be had on the ground is the socioeconomics. They need to see it. They need to see that the climate actions, whatever you want to call it, is actually increasing their socioeconomic bottom line. It is increasing their revenues. We had some of them saying that they're in chamas, they're in cooperative. So how can this climate action solution then be a source of increasing the ability to save more or to put more in their cooperative, and then in that sense better take care of their families and develop themselves? So actually what you are saying here, as you have correctly said, the mainstream of the narrative, as in my response, the mainstream of narrative is such that climate change only is sellable when it is projecting liabilities. But what we are seeing, what actually can work with the majority on the ground, where it can impact can be registered, is when it becomes a source of opportunities from a socioeconomic angle, and that is what we need more of. And how then do we get this more of this change in narrative? When the symbiosis that we are seeing there becomes the norm. What we are seeing there is what? Young people retooling their skills through innovative volunteerism, being selfless, not looking at what they're getting out of what they are doing immediately, but looking at the long term, looking at how this solution can make sense to ordinary people on the ground. These people taking it up, and when they take it up, creating opportunities for themselves, and then seeing it more as something that is of value to them, and they can invest in it. And that's what we are seeing. So we need more of this symbiosis where young people are retooling their skills, and then they work with the community, nurture the community to be a market, and then deliver these solutions more and more. The communities take them up as a source of investment, and then we can now see more of this cycle coming up, and over time the narrative will change. It will change from just looking at the headline news, which talk of liabilities, to looking at
Great.
the opportunity. So I believe this is innovative volunteerism, the way to go, and we're on the right track.
Excellent. I think we will take a break now, and when we come back, we will be discussing on the kind of intrinsic values that Africans and even the globe needs to be able to embrace actions that can move the needle forward, but do so through the lens of the environment, and how each and every one of us can play a role. For those who are watching, please drop your comments and your questions and your ideas and perspectives, so that at least we can be able to have an interaction with you today. All of you watching, there is a comment site on whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube or on LinkedIn or on Twitter. You can be able to drop a comment, and we will be able to see it and get back to you. We will be right back after this advert. Thank you.
Some of the groups we have trained, they are very saving and good associations. We have sourced these trainers from over 7 groups, and what you see behind me, we are still making the briquettes using the machines which are fabricated by the youth. This is a systems approach whereby we enable these groups to get cassava cuttings of over 40 acres, and some of the groups planted them and they have come out very well, as you see, and also drying them using cassava, using a solar dryer, and after that we have trained them on via addition using the cassava drops from the solar dryer, and also using the raw materials from the cassava, which are peelings and also other flour, to make the briquettes. So we have trained a number of over 40 today in briquettes making, and they are ready to, some of them are ready to take the machines to see how these machines function, and also make small company, or so they can start getting some income in order to increase their saving. The other reasons for this is to improve their livelihoods, increase on their saving, and also make sure that they stop using the firewood and the charcoal, and also turn to using briquettes. Because briquettes are smoke-free, they are quick at burning, they take long, over 4 hours, and we have tried out.
Yes, and we are back. We are back, Bob. And during that commercial break, which was to be used as an opportunity to showcase what is happening, I could see there in the Buganda Kingdom, where actions through the framework of the Babasa Liberty and Volunteerism, briquettes are being made from waste, and the briquettes are replacing charcoal, which is choking our mothers in communities. They are dying, over 100,000 of them in the continent today. And building on these are things that can be done by ordinary citizens. They do not need any rocket science. They do not need any heavy cash. But what is missing in us as human beings that we cannot be able to do that, which is easier to build on it and generate the data as you are talking about, to make it become the norm and not the exception? What do we need? What do Africans need? Especially the African youth, what do they need to be able to embrace solutions that are at their own doorstep to make a change in both their lives and the community?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Actually, in my take, the biggest issue is the lack of self-belief. That is, for me, the biggest issue among most of these people, because they don't see themselves as being able to make a change. It is actually, I think that is actually the biggest thing in the innovative volunteerism work that we are seeing. Most of them still believe that they are not really capable. They're not seeing themselves as the actually source of solutions that Africa needs. They are seeing themselves more as victims. You know, I think there's a time we discussed something to the extent that for most of us, having a certification, any form of certification, is seen as an entitlement to receive
As a
something.
gateway, as a
Yes.
license
As a
to a
license.
job.
Absolutely. To a job. No complaints. You cannot blame them because that is the culture, or that is the way, the conditioning.
The autopilot culture.
Yes, yeah, that is, yeah, you called it the other day, autopilot mentality. That is the norm in society. That is what you are told from the time you are growing up, that you do this, you do the other, you finish school, then you get a job. You see, so that now becomes the norm. That is the norm. But that norm has not worked. As we speak, 13 million young people are out there looking for work,
Right.
and the opportunities are shrinking. You see, the competition is increasing, and they're shrinking more. Why? Because the economic model that we see is one that is not anchored on solutions provisions as a source of creating enterprise. So most of them then are stuck in this area where they are partly victims, partly, not sure what to do, partly not believing in themselves. But this is why now I think I need to say that innovative volunteerism really has come at the right time, because we are now seeing more and more people, young people, ordinary people just like us, taking the step and doing something and getting something out of it, making impact, nurturing communities into markets, delivering solutions that tap what we read in books. For example, we read that, like the example you showed right now, talking of briquettes. What we read is that the market, the market for charcoal in Africa is worth 20 billion and over. These young people we are seeing in Uganda, in innovative marketers, what they are doing, they're actually tapping into a 20 billion a year opportunity by providing an alternative that is 2 times cheaper, that is more dignified, and that is actually performs better in terms of the fight producer, in terms of what it's supposed to do, which is the cooking. So more of these examples will incentivize and will inspire more people to change and become solution providers and stop seeing themselves as victims, or stop seeing themselves as entitled to be given something.
So
yes, and I believe that's the case.
Exactly, Bob. Thank you very much for that. I mean, this behavior of not availing self to be part of the solution, but always availing self to complain about the problem. How can we break this ice? It's been there for long. We talk, we share examples, we showcase, but nothing seems to be changing. How do we get out of this? I'm trying to find a word. How do we get out of this space in which everybody has engulfed himself in, and nobody wants to get out of the yoke?
Absolutely. Actually, I think, to agree with you, it has become worse because there are more avenues of complaining now than there were before.
Social media.
Yes, social media is used for that typical, engagement of either entertaining oneself, wasting a bit of time there, looking at what may not really be of much value, complaining, venting, and all the while things remain the same. What I think
Bob,
is,
before you continue, I mean, there's this, you see, the point is this: we are not in any way saying people should not be able to complain about an issue. But what we are saying is, as you complain, can you also explain to us what you are doing to solve that problem, so that at least we can then, at the end of the day, instead of complaining about the problem, we're saying, this is the problem, this is how I'm doing it, and I need more hands, so that at least we can turn this problem into an opportunity. That is not the narrative, and that is not even the attitude. And when you want to talk about from that perspective, it seems like nobody wants to listen. So what do you think can be done to break this ice? Because it's a serious issue, and like you rightly said, people are not getting more opportunities in terms of complaining. When I say opportunities, in that they have more spaces in which they can then complain, and nothing changes, then they come the next day and they complain, the next year and complain, and nothing changes, and they seem to be getting some fun and fulfillment out of this attitude. How can we break this for real?
Sure. Actually, yeah, let me also just correct myself. There's no blaming of any young people. I mean, any young person. Yeah, I mean, these are our people, these are our, our families, these are our friends.
Right.
So no complaint about young people, and we cannot deny the fact that they have not really been shown anything better so far. I mean, let's agree. But at the same time, I think to come to you now in terms of the solution, I think we need to start addressing this through the institutions that we have more seriously. Because the time I heard you talk about we cannot really address anything midway. There are some things that we cannot really address the midstream. There's some things that one needs to go back and start from the beginning to address them. And I think the institutions that we have in this continent, and I'm not talking about legislative or government, I'm just talking about the ordinary social institutions we have in society, the family, schools, and even the religious institutions. They need to be the places that shape the psyche, places that shape the mindset of our population. They need to be at the forefront of sending clear narratives and clear messages that we as the population, we as ordinary citizens, we owe ourselves the futures, the solutions that we desire. We actually, the continent, the countries depend on us to be providers of solutions. So the issue here is more of a mindset, and how that mindset can be changed through leveraging institutions that most of us engage in. And these are the family institution, the
right. Bob,
yes, sure.
You are mentioning something very important. I think just as you are talking, Chiramba says, great to listen to someone who you can see on the screen here. Chiramba, he says, great to listen to someone else admitting that we all need to help save the environment if we make cash out of it or get some sort of pleasure from our actions. The way to put it is monetize the solutions to climate change. And I think this is exactly what we are trying to do. And I think building on that, without steering you up from what you were saying, but there seems to be a failure when it comes to the narrative of solutions to the problems we face today. And if you do not monetize action, people will feel as if they're doing some kind of voluntary work. Oh, what am I going to get out of it? And then if I don't do it, then nothing changes. So how do you think we can then be able to lay the foundation? Yes, building the institutions that work, instilling in people the values that work, but through that lens that if they do it, they benefit.
Absolutely. I think we have to start with the institutions we have to start with what we already have now. The platforms that we already have that engage in this space of climate action should now look into bringing in non-typical actors into this space. For example, just to give an example of innovative volunteerism, what we are seeing is people who are not necessarily in the climate action arena coming in and devising solutions, retooling their skills to devise solutions that then generate income. Because let's face it, not everything that you do will generate income unless you do it with that intention from the word go. Climate action needs to be from that dimension. Of anything done in climate action should be from that lens of how can it be monetized, as our good friend has said it, and how can it be a marketable solution that many people can buy it and buy it affordably. So the platforms that we have now need to follow that as a model. Innovative volunteerism is one. There are many others, I believe, across the continent. The aspect of taking climate action as a social endeavor or an environmental endeavor really needs to change. It needs to become an enterprise endeavor, and more actors who are not necessarily from the field will come in. They cross-hybridise ideas, whether it be in terms of technology, whether it be in terms of approaches, and we'll see more of these enterprises coming up from climate action. Yes, so the platforms you have need to change and take that.
And that is a very good point. Let me just play this clip, and then how people are already explaining how climate actions are helping them to put food on the table and money in their pockets. And then from there, we will build on this. And then the aspect of values will still come back to it so that we'll have a conversation around it. Because if you look at the attitude of the issues we face, the externalization of solutions, whereas there are local solutions that can be embraced, sometimes never really seems to get attention. But for the externalization to continuously getting revved up, how can we change that mentality? After this video, we will dive straight to that question. Here we go.
We have the plenty of gardens, so we hope we shall receive Bafosa, we assume that in the coming days or months, we shall receive enough cassava to dry in our dryer, and we planted those trees and we have the plenty of gardens. So we hope we shall receive more cassava to dry in our dryer.
So in the previous season, do members still have the cassava in their gardens?
They have, but they don't have much. So we hope we are going to add on more from what we received from Bafosa, because we received the cassava trees. Yeah.
So how has according to the village, observing this solar dryer being in this place, how have they seen it as a community? Because you are the only group in this region having this solar dryer. So according to you?
They are very happy, and they are willing to use it to accommodate good wealth, because they receive good cassava from it and they are willing to use it.
How many so far kilograms have you dried in this solar dryer?
As I told you before, cassava has been little, but now we have managed to dry at least like 150 kg from our dryer, and we assume by the end of June, because we are ready to look for another cassava and we dry in our dryer. So apart from that kilograms I have told you, we assume we can double it and we upgrade our outcome from the dryer.
So I'm seeing a fence on a dryer. Maybe you can hold on it. We can go there and hold on it. What is the use of this fence perimeter wall you made?
The committee of the dryer, which is a charcoal stove, to boil the porridge, which is used and water, and also boil the beans to see the longevity of the briquettes which are made by Bafosa Uganda and African Farmers Media Center. Thanks for this group, and we are collaborating with CBS Peosa Cooperative, and that's why we are in this village selling along association trying to make income generating activities for them, and one of them, the briquettes which are trained the urban groups, and for the rural groups we go into value additions and also EBA, which is ecosystem-based adaptation approaches, so that they can increase on their savings. Thank you very much.
The Innovative Volunteerism Youth.
I can just tell them thank you. In fact, they should bring more and more for these dryers.
Yes.
And I would encourage them to continue with this work because they will improve the lifestyles of these women and even the whole world. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Tabitha Nyawira.
Yes, Bob.
Yes.
From Uganda, Buganda Kingdom to Kirinyaga in Kenya, we're seeing solutions, seeing communities saying they are drying their cassava, they're harvesting, they're putting money in the pocket. We're seeing communities being trained to turn briquettes, turn waste into briquettes. And then we're seeing mothers acknowledging opportunities, drying their maize, drying their beans, drying their rice. So what is making us in a continent not to believe in what we have?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, let me just start by commenting on what we are seeing there. Really, really very, very encouraging things we are seeing there. And what I believe you've said before, chain reaction of solutions. Right. From the ground where that is not enough, because the value people see is monetary. So, and you cannot monetize at that upstream level. And moving on to value addition and on to marketing, and all this being driven through the climate action lens, where climate action actually is providing solutions, marketable solutions that the people are seeing benefit of in terms of monetary and taking them up. So this really is something that is really nice, and I think more of what we do needs to be taking that dimension across the continent, that dimension of a chain reaction, starting from the ground, going to the intermediate, and finishing at the end. Not just stopping what we usually hear all the time, that we need to produce more, produce more, produce. No, going all the way, and climate action now intervening to provide the solutions. Now, yeah, to come to your question, why are we not seeing more of this? Why is it not being what they
Yes,
if I
built
can put it
on,
properly,
leverage
yeah,
on
built
to
on,
make
and
progress.
yeah,
We
exactly.
keep seeing duplication of efforts, new things coming as if they have never happened. Why don't we build on this? Say, okay, you did this. What is the gap? Then we build on that and move forward.
Yes, absolutely. For me, I take that to be because the aspect of the cash, or the aspect of the financing aspect is not being seen more clearly. People are not really seeing the financial benefit of it directly. The scale of financing, in terms of the not finance in terms of what comes in, but what comes out of the process, is not really coming out very clearly, and people are not seeing the financial benefit they're getting out of it. So more of this, as they say, Rome was never built in a day. As more of this gets out there, as more of these solutions get to the communities, and more people testify of what they're getting, and more of these solutions get taken up through inclusive structures of financing, like the cooperatives that we had in Buganda Kingdom, or even the community groups in Kirinyaga, who are taking this up and investing it, and using what the income they're getting and investing in their own cooperatives. So as more of this financing aspect, or the financial benefit aspect comes out, then there'll be more of the people, or
Right.
there'll be more people who actually see the benefit of it and investing. Because let's not run away from this truth, that the real motivator for more people is the finance. If they see that they're getting money out of something, they'll put their money in it.
That is
Whether little or most, or much, they will. So the more we see testimonials of people getting financial benefit out of it and building on structures that are inclusive, then the more of these solutions will be taken up. I believe so.
that's very interesting. What is the role of culture in this? Because we cannot wipe out the cultural aspect that somehow have contributed to the attitude of blame game, or most of the time, that have contributed to the attitude of not self-believing in what we can put in place to address challenges. Because the point is, there is absolutely nothing wrong to have something elsewhere to supplement what is already ongoing. That's fine. Ideas evolve, innovations evolve. But the argument here is, why is it that local innovations are not embraced by the very people who need them most? And you've said rightly that at least when they start to see money in it, they will embrace. But who are those who will do it without seeing money, so that others will embrace? Because they seem to be dancing the same song in the same place, with very few moving forward to do that which others can follow. So how do we break that ice? I go back to the same thing.
Sure, the culture aspect now. Yeah, so the finance is one, but the culture is there. Actually,
Right.
I think we can even say this with significance, with significant level of certainty, that
Yes.
had the solutions been brought in by some other groups, they will have been embraced more, because the assumption is that whatever comes from this other group could be beneficial to us. They benefit us more than what we are seeing being produced locally. There's a saying that a prophet is never
Welcome in his
appreciated
own
in their own
hometown.
village. Yes, welcome in their own hometown. Familiarity brings contempt. They say, oh, what is this one doing, whatever.
Correct.
So there's more, absolutely, the culture that we have around is a detriment to a very large extent. And addressing that, once again, I'll go back to what you said. I think you told me sometime that some of these problems you cannot solve midstream. You have to start from the word go. You have to start with the young people. The young people have to change their attitude, you see. And that is why I believe your focus is mostly, considering that you say the young people are a bigger hope for Africa. It has to start from there. They have to change the way they think. They have to start appreciating more of our local solutions. They have to appreciate more, believe in themselves more, that they're actually capable of providing solutions, they're capable of being solution providers, and then build it from there. But
Do you think, Ibo,
yes,
do you think young people are inspired enough to take the bull by the horns and lead the way through the solutions lens? Or you think they are not inspired in the way they're supposed to be inspired, and so now they relegate themselves to be complainers in chief? What is your gut feeling with this?
Absolutely. I believe there's always room for improvement. The innovative volunteerism actors we are seeing, most of them are young people. So we cannot say that they're not inspired. So those who are already doing it, the few who are doing it are inspired. They believe in themselves. They are out there. They are selfless enough. They are saying that they understand what is going on, and they believe that they can be the solution providers, and they can nurture their communities to be a market unto them. So we cannot say that young people are not inspired. They are inspired. But out of what is happening with these critical, what we need to generate now more is a critical mass of people who are taking these solutions up, and from them the more will be inspired, because I believe inspiration is a form of incentive. More will be inspired by seeing others doing it. I believe most people averagely will believe in a product. People believe in a product, not a process. So when they see more of a product coming in and people benefiting out of that product, then they'll believe in it more. So what I'd say is innovative volunteerism and more of these kind of platforms that you have across the continent need to actually continue, never be discouraged, but continue and generate more of this ground of examples which will inspire more action. I believe, of course, there'll be those who will never change. I mean, that is given in society. There are those who will always be naysayers, but there are those who are pessimistic but are looking to see what they'll get out of it, what others are getting out of it, and they'll throw their hat in the ring. So I believe consistency is what we need more of in our current times. Consistency.
Excellent. I think that is a very interesting perspective. This is the sport, and in the sport, you also have the opportunity to ask questions. But before I get to that, today is Sunday, and there are many people who have already gone to church, and others who may be going to church as we speak, and others who are coming out of church, and others who go to church in the evening. What is the role of the church, or what should have been the role of the church in perfecting the right attitude to drive climate action solutions and transformational development? And why is that not happening?
I think that's a very excellent question, because these are social institutions that can have a very foundational and very fundamental role to play in terms of building the Africa everybody wants to see, the Africa of the Vision 2063, the Africa we want. It is these social institutions that are actually at the center of building that. And one word, I think that's one word that you also say, you've told me this many times: principles and values. Let people act based on principle, not based on a feeling. It should be a matter of principles. Yeah, going to church is not a feeling. It should be a
Correct.
principle. You're going there to learn more about principles and apply these principles. Hold yourself into account. Each of us should hold ourselves accountable, because that is the reason of it, the reason of life. We are to be useful in life, and to be useful in life, you have to have some principles around which you operate. And these institutions are there actually to help nurture more of these principles. So what these institutions can do more is focus more on these principles and addressing why people are not implementing these principles more. The more we have people implementing the principles, the more we will see this intrinsic capital of Africa, which is the people,
right,
step into the plate and begin to provide.
So Bob, very succinctly put. But what will it take? Because you see, the thing is, there is the obliviousness by the citizens, and this obliviousness is manifesting from the perspective that someone else have to do something instead of the principles applied. They are looked up that someone have to apply the principle, as we relegate ourselves to the back burner. And I've watched this thing very carefully, and I'm really happy that we're discussing this at the moment. And I believe our viewers who are watching could also throw in some comments if they can. And as we relegate ourselves to the back, waiting for others to do it, the problems continue to evolve and multiply. And it seems not to really be taken as a matter of urgency. So what will break the ice? The preachers, the Christians, the believers, because we are all supposed to do that which benefit society and at the same time protect our very environment in which we urgently need, because environment is food, environment is health, environment is national security, environment is employment, environment is everything. So why is this not becoming a center where people can be ushered to leverage the values that are needed to do that which can benefit society? I don't see this really happening, and it seems like we need to stand on top of a mountain to shout.
Absolutely. I'll say two things. The first is accountability. Honestly, I think each of us, regardless of where, provided you are breathing, you need to hold yourself accountable. Hold yourself personally accountable, because if you'll be held accountable in the long run. So you better start holding yourself accountable. So I think that is the first thing. Regardless of who you are, whatever you believe in, whatever position you hold in society, hold yourself accountable to principle.
Right.
That is the first thing. The second, I believe, is those who are already living the principles, those who are providing examples, should continue. There's a day I think you told me that where you find that there is no benchmark, be the benchmark. You see, yes, be the benchmark.
Exactly. Be the benchmark, so that others can follow. Don't always wait for others to be the, because they will never be. They want you, as you are waiting for them, they're waiting for you.
Exactly. Yes. So that aspect of being the benchmark, really, for me, that was also a personal challenge that you have said it many times. There may not be examples around. Be the example and proceed. Even the other day, I think in a conversation, I told you that the vision has overtaken you. I think there's a day we discussed something of that sort. Yes. But that is the way it's supposed to be. The vision, the clarity of vision needs to overtake each of us. We need to the ambition and the energy and the doing the principles need to overtake all of us and focus on that. And as we do that, then others will see, and more will be converted, and more will come to the play. Because let's not highlight 60 years of the same thing, 60 years of half steps. Really, the only change that needs to happen is we the people. We Africans need to.
I like that. We the people have to take charge. And then I think another comment from Che Chiramba. He says, sadly, some communities seem to think their own people cannot be trusted, and that unless it is brought in elsewhere, blah, blah, blah. He said, not easy to believe in someone with a great idea, but poorer than you. My own view, that is his own view, Chiramba, that he says his own view on the solar drying produce is that communities could try to grow and value add high value per kilogram, contrast the retail value of, say, chilies and compared to cassava, and the business model of the buyers should be on a profit sharing basis. Without that, brokers will profit more than the growers. What's your take on his comment?
Yes, sure. I think yeah.
And before that, thank you very much, Chiramba. We appreciate you for watching and also for sharing these comments, which we highly appreciate. Yes, Bob.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think yes, business models, of course, should be formulated around the value, what is perceived to be value amongst those who will be the market. I think that should be the baseline here. If, for example, you talked of the produce from a solar dryer being packaged in a way that the value can be seen, that it can be marketed in a way that there's more value seen amongst the majority. I agree with that, absolutely. That should be the approach, that whatever it is, product development has to be at the core of it, and this product develop in a way that value is seen amongst those who will be the end consumers. For example, I think the briquettes, for example, waste recovery to fuel briquettes is a very good example. 90% of the continent or around there use biomass as a primary source of fuel.
Right.
Now, here you're coming up with a product, climate action solution that can be perceived as being more dignified, more affordable, and better at doing what it's supposed to do. So I think that is the approach that we need to take. Product development focused on coming up with products or services that are actually perceived of value by the target consumers. Yes.
Excellent. Just lastly, before I hand over to you, because this is the spot and everybody on the spot is a conversation. You will have to ask some questions or any clarification that you want to ask. my last point is the changing climate presents the best opportunity to the world. The price of solar has gone down. The opportunities in seeing environmental challenges from the dimension that we can turn them to wealth creating, job creating opportunities for young people. This seems not to be taking precedence. What is the missing link? I understand, yes, the money, the messaging and the narrative is not pitched around opportunities through the money lens most of the time, and so that dissuade people. But even when the young people, most of them, because Africa's youth and even the global youth are sovereign capital, they are what will be leveraged to make a meaningful change in a positive direction, whether we like it or not. The youth are Africa's best opportunity to be leveraged to drive transformational development, to build climate resilience, and to build back economies from the ravage of COVID-19. My point is, given this, do the youth believe in themselves? Yes, most of them do. Then if they do, why is the effort to make them become solution providers so difficult? And how can this ice be broken? Briefly.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. I think the responsibility, is shared. It cannot really be, the youth cannot merely be, or the target cannot merely be recipients. They also have to play a role. The youth have a role to play. I mean, all of us have a role to play to use or to get the message that is being said and apply ourselves to it. I think in the beginning, during the tester, we said that you can take a horse to the stream, but you cannot force it, to drink. So it has to be two-way. The youth have to be midway. Secondly, I think also there have to be more targeted incentives given to these young people, especially those who are doing something already. We have to appreciate that already the business environment across the continent is improving, but more can be done to tap more opportunities. For example,
yes, Bob, you mentioned incentives. Maybe for those who are listening, just to break down some few incentives that governments, policymakers can be able to put in place to just ensure that our youth can tap into and seize these opportunities. Yes, practical incentives. That 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sure. Okay. The first one I can say, it can start from the education side. The education system should focus more on equipping learners with more practical skills that get them out there to drive solutions in areas that are already clear.
Right.
So there should be a clear linkage between what people are learning with the existing challenges or the existing gaps within an economy or within a country. So that there should be that clear link, so that somebody comes out of school knowing exactly the areas or the gaps that they need to fill, and they can then add more knowledge, inspire themselves more around a clear area. Right now, somebody can come out of school not really knowing where they can apply themselves in an economy. So the more we have most of this cleared, that somebody is in school, whatever they're being taught, as it is theoretically sound, benchmark against the best, but it is more contextualized and aligned to addressing gaps within a particular economy or particular continent. Then we'll have more of our people. That is already an incentive, because somebody will come out knowing exactly the area that they can tap.
So what you are saying is that Africa needs an education revolution.
Absolutely.
Tailored to the realities, not abstraction.
Absolutely. More of that is needed. Yes, sir.
Excellent. The second.
Yes. Yeah, the second can be, though this is being done, but we need more of this. The bureaucratic institutions within our economies, the ones that are actually meant to make the business environment better, they need to be more attuned to the needs of the people on the ground, the small business holders, the informal actors, the young people who are starting their enterprises. The institutions need to be more attuned to them. They need to be more aligned to the needs of somebody who is starting afresh, who is starting from scratch. When a young person, let's give an example, hypothetical case, a young person sees this discussion, is inspired to do something, says, okay, I'll step out there and start a briquettes making enterprise. They go out there, they hear, okay, you need to have a license to do this. They go to the licensing officers, and what they get there is more of bureaucracies and being taken around in circles. We need less of this, honestly. The institutions need them to work more for the people who are already doing something. So that is another incentive, I'll say.
So the institutions we have at the moment,
yes,
we can say they're working against the people and not creating any enabling environment, most of them.
Yes, they're not actively focused on the people. They are there, their mandate is clear, but when it comes to now the practical aspect of it, you don't see it. Yeah, terrible. It's more trouble and less of solutions. So we need the institutions really working to target the need areas of those who are actually doing things on the ground, the young people and the informal sector. So the institutions need to be more attuned to them and listen to them more and act, yes, in bridging the gaps.
And the third one?
Okay, the third one, I believe most of this is being done. The fiscal side of things, the fiscal incentives. We do not deny that, you know, the governments and, you know, operate based on, you know, the taxes people pay. But can we have a regime where those who are starting get some form of reprieve, that they don't pay, they're not penalized much for not maybe paying some taxes, so that they can be allowed to then stabilize themselves and grow the enterprises, be given some form of breaks,
right,
on some of these expenditures, and then over time, once they stabilize, then they can now be brought in to the formal regime of paying taxes. That will be another, I think, that can.
Yes, what we are saying is very practical steps, and what baffles is that sometimes these practical, easy steps are not taken up, and we're still looking for answers to this. So I think since this is a sport and we have actually 4 minutes to the top of the hour, and I think we will still need about 10-15 minutes. I'll hand over to you if you have any question or clarification that we may want to seek, and then I can provide answers. Over to you, Bob.
Okay, I thank you very much, sir. Much humbled, to be engaging you, and I say this with a lot of sincerity, because I've known you, I mean, for many years, and one of the things that I've come to appreciate of you is your focus on young people. Yes, your focus of young people is something that is really, I mean, it's encouraging, and I think we need to acknowledge that. So why do you find young people as of much importance to Africa's growth?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. And I mean, I appreciate and thanks for the great work you do in driving climate action and transformational development through the low emissions lens. The point is this: you can only go to war with the army you have, and you can only operate from a position of strength. And if you look across the world, and more so in the African continent, the young people are Africa's strength. They have the numbers. They're energetic. They're passionate. Their ingenuity level is beyond comparison to any. And their vibrancy is such that if you are able to tap into that and guide them, and more importantly, they are not contaminated. When I say contaminated, is they didn't grow up in a generation with baggage. When I say baggage, is they do not have the same challenges that were faced in the 60s or in the 70s or even in the 80s. Most of them were born in the early 2000s and late 90s. And what that means is that the world in which they were born into had challenges that were pretty much different from the challenges that were in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, and in the 80s. And then there was the outburst of technology, internet, computers, mobile technology. And this gave them the opportunity to then know what we at the very age didn't know. If you see today, my 13-year-old daughter already understands how to use the internet and use social media, and at the same time even appear on TV to be able to explain what she's doing through innovative volunteerism. We never had that opportunity. So when you look at the opportunities that these young people have today and the challenges they face, those opportunities they have outweigh those challenges if they are tactically leveraged to then be able to use what they have to address those challenges. And when they're addressing those challenges, they create opportunities. So I do believe that if we can tap on the ingenuity of young people, on their talents, on their skills, on their passion, on their creativity, we can then be able to address the monumental challenges we face. Because let's face it, Africa's youth are Africa's sovereign capital. And when you use your capital, because human capital, as we say, is 4 times the value of produced capital and 15 times the value of natural capital. That then means that if they are skilled and leveraged and inspired to self-believe, then Africa will have everything it needs to be able to address the environmental challenges as well as the developmental challenges they face. That is one aspect. The second aspect why I believe in them is that if you take the population, as I said, 60% it's youthful. And at the same time, they are the ones who are actually facing the biggest level of unemployment. 60% of the very population, they're unemployed. How will you be able to create the solutions that will create the jobs for these young people? You need them. At the same time, if you don't create opportunities for them, they become the biggest threat to the continent. Because if you take the age group beyond 60, 70, they're quite very few as compared to the young people. And those young people will be graduating to the age group of 40, 50, 60 in the coming years. If they are not skilled to then be able to provide solutions, they'll be inheriting the challenges that they have been complaining about today, and then that will become worse. Then the continent will become a ticking time bomb for chaos. And that is something that is more dangerous. So my focus on them and my belief in them, it's from the opportunities perspective, but at the same time, also from the perspective on how to prevent an avalanche of trouble into the future. Because if they are not tapped today and inspired to self-believe, then we will end up having a more bigger burden than what we think we have today. And lastly, if you look at climate change and environment, yes, of course, we need finance. That's very important. Yes, we need technology transfer. Of course, that is very, very important. Yes, we need capacity building. But who are those to implement? Our mothers in villages need replacement of charcoal with biogas, with briquettes. Who are those who are going to produce? Our mothers are older. They will not have the energy to produce this solution. It is the young people. We need value addition. Who are those who are going to then be able to produce the tools that can be able to add value? Young people. So you will notice that any dimension to transformational development can easily be brought by young people. They have the energy, the ingenuity, the ideas, the talent, the skills. So leaving them out of any equation, no matter how excellent the idea might be, we will not succeed because the young people are the intervening force to be able to address any challenge, both from the perspective of the tools, of the inputs, and from the perspective of ensuring that at least sustainability can also happen.
Wow. 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 Very loaded answer. Very loaded.
Yes.
Yeah, very
Thank
loaded.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so my second question will build a bit from that, and it follows from the work that we've been doing across the continent. Actually, I'd say you are the first person I ever had, and that now actually inspired me to even take that dimension of climate and environment action as an opportunity or an investment opportunity. And they've done this with results at the high level, for example. Yes, I know, that you are among those who pushed, for example, to have countries adopt the Amsterdam decision on innovative solutions, which was for me was a flagship environmental decision that offers an opportunity to draw in non-typical actors within an economy to then unlock the investment opportunities in climate action. I'd say, so what do you think has been the performance of this dimension, of this narrative of climate action as investment opportunity so far? What do you think has been the performance of this?
Excellent. Thanks again, Bob, for that question. The reality is that if we do not appreciate progress, we can never make progress. And I've always said that Africa is not collapsing. And I think that anytime, anywhere that Africa is discussed, it must be discussed from the perspective of progress. Have Africa progressed enough? I don't really think that any country in the entire world has progressed enough, but the progress they have made is different for each and every other country. So what am I trying to say? If you take Africa as a continent, Africa has progressed very well in terms of policies. If you look, the Africa of today is different from the Africa of the 60s. the innovations that we look across the continent today, before I come back to your answer, whether we're talking Cardiopad, which was developed in Cameroon, or we're talking about robotic street lights in Congo, or we're talking about information communication technology application that connect models to farms, to markets, to assess inputs. I mean, we keep seeing this. We're talking about tools that young people are developing, like solar fridges, where they're decentralizing for models to use pay-as-you-go model, and even solar dryers. I mean, there are a lot of innovations. But when you look at why excellent policies like the Innovative Environmental Solution decision that was taken by the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, or even the Paris Climate Change Agreement that have been ratified by over 52 African countries, and now they're ramping up the revisions of the plans that they put in place. Beautiful ideas, amazing on paper. We must applaud Africa for that. When it comes to policy, I don't really think there is any continent that can really compete with Africa that much when it comes to putting policies in place. The biggest challenge that Africa faces, I really put this within the 5 I's. So Africa doesn't lack ideas. Africa doesn't lack innovation. So when it comes to ideas and innovation, I think Africa is tier 1. But there are 3 I's out of those 5 I's that have not been addressed. And one of them is incentives. The lack of incentives. When we talk incentives, the mindset always goes to, oh, it's money. No. Inspiration is the biggest missing incentive that needs to be injected in each and every one of us, because an inspired human being is unstoppable. An inspired human being, and especially an inspired youth, to know that he or she can be able to do it and guided to do it in a structured way, you will see wonders. Of course, this will take time, but once we start doing it and people can be inspired to self-believe that you can do it. Yes, you may not have the answers today, but if you focus and dedicate and put in effort, you will achieve it. So incentives is very, very important. The other one is institutions. And I think you alluded to this in the answers that you gave earlier. The institutions are there, their mandates are clear, but do they work for the people? Do they carry out what they're supposed to carry? Yes, if it is an institution like a standardization institutions that is supposed to put in place standards in a country, do assessing these standards, let's take, for example, briquette standards in country, where in most governments' finance bill, there are tax incentives that are given to young people to then be able to produce briquettes. If those young people are to get those standards and make sure that the process is followed, will there be bureaucracy or not? Most of the time you see that there is bureaucracy, so that becomes a disincentive to the young person to even do that. So when we look at these aspects of institutions, the question is, are institutions working for the people or working against the people? That is a disincentive. Then the last part is implementation. One of the biggest actually hills for Africa has been the fact that, yes, the proliferation of excellent policies, finance policies, infrastructure policy, environmental policy, development policies, and all the rest, education policy, health policy, when the rubber hits the road, that's where the reality now dawns. Policy implementation is at its lowest. And this seems not to change. Then the continuous proliferation of policy without focusing on why do we need another policy when we have not tried to implement what we put before, and then learn from that policy. And the only way to address this implementation is to build on what works, because Africa's development model cannot be a run of the mill or the roll of the thumb model. It must build on what has worked and the gaps identified fill. That way you will move Africa's development very quickly and with impact feel by the communities. Because one of the aspects is, as I said earlier, you go to war with the army you have, you can only win and compete from your position of strength. Africa's strength is her youth, and more so the informal sector that creates over 80% of the jobs that the continent actually have today. So if you engage the youth and engage the informal sector to close the gaps, and from there build on the data that is coming out of that to help inform the already existing policies or create new ones that have never existed to close the gaps of the informal sector, your economy will grow. And I just want to end by saying this. When you hear discussions about development, especially within the context of Africa, sometimes it baffles me because the discussions focus most of the time on the macro level. Yes, that's important, but that's not really where the big issues of Africa's challenges are. There at the micro level. The over 80% of the population in Africa is rural. These are mothers, these are brothers and sisters, our fathers, who actually do not even sometimes have the meal to feed their family, but they have the ability to get up every morning inspired to go to the farm, to be able to fetch food for their kids and send them to school. But their challenges are not that big in terms of how to address them. They just need a borehole for water to drink. They just need a simple solar dryer to add value to their vegetable, to their beans, to their maize, to their rice, so that at least it can be able to even stay for 6 months as they look for a market. So when you look at those simple solutions to complex challenges that can be solvable, when they're ignored and then the macro level of big roots, which are needed, but sometimes without addressing those nitty-gritty things in the community, we end up having a mismatch between what is needed urgently that could have helped fit up into that macro. We're not having macro being forced down to micro, which doesn't work.
Wow. Hey, wow, wow. Honestly, I hope we can just have this segment really somewhat lifted and presented somewhere so that it can inform more people, because I think these are nuggets that are really, very important. Okay, my third question will be more personal now, because I think I read your book. I've read your book, and within
Right.
it, there's a place that I think is where the juicy stuff now starts, where you talk of your moment of epiphany. Yes, what made you discover your value, your purpose, and your need to offer value? Yes, and you talk of the challenges that were prevailing, within your community at the time, that you came to realize that actually challenges are faced within the broader community, and indeed the entire continent. You responded differently. Yes, you responded to offer solutions to those challenges. Those challenges that you talked of are not unique. Most people are facing the same thing as we speak right
Correct.
now. Most of us have seen those things, but we not necessarily respond in the same way. Africa is generally a continent of adversity, and what you talked of is something that is not strange. People see it all the time. So, why do you think you responded differently and others do not necessarily respond in the same way?
Thank you again, Bob. I mean, this is a very important question and personal, as you say, but very relevant to the issues we've discussed about climate change, to the issues we've discussed about environmental challenges, and to the solutions that we are preferring here today and in other spaces that we have had even the opportunity to write them. Let me put it this way. The truth is, the purpose of life is to be useful. And each and every one of us must find it in our own selves with an answer in answering this question: what am I useful for? Because the reality is, and I like the word you use differently, that I responded differently. Yes, we are different, we are differently made with different talents and skills, but our purposefulness is same: usefulness. That is the commonality. When we are useful, we will be useful in different ways, but at the end of the day, we are useful. And unless an individual, regardless of how old you are, accept that I have to be useful to do something that goes beyond my immediate family, to touch my broader community, we will continue to face the challenges we face today, because we are talking at a time when there is selfishness, when there is a lot of hopelessness. And the hopelessness is coming from the fact that people still think individualistically. Oh, I'm not having what I wanted to have. Oh, it's all about individual. And then you end up having a collection of so many individuals thinking individually rather than thinking collectively towards preferring solutions to ensure that they are useful to the communities and to the society. And so what actually inspired me and still inspires me today is that, like I said and you said, we must become the benchmark of excellence in whatever thing we do. And we're not becoming benchmark of excellence to be applauded or to be awarded. If that comes, so be it, but that should never be the intent. The intent should be benchmark of excellence to be useful, to do that which touches many other people's lives. And that should make you happy. And once you are happy with what you do that touches other people's lives, that is the biggest fulfillment that we should live for, regardless of what we do. And
Wow.
so that purposefulness of doing something that fulfills you to be happy is fulfilling enough that any other thing is secondary. And so if a
Wow.
mother can be able to put a smile on her face that I was able to dry my vegetables because I had a tool to do so, that have actually been decentralized to her by youth who were inspired by you to do so, that puts a smile on your face. If a mother can then be able to extend her life by just a year or 3 or 4 years by moving away from depending on charcoal and using fuel briquettes, which were made as a result of us going out of our way to inspire you to retool their skills to turn waste to briquettes, that should put a smile on our faces. That is usefulness. And unless we start to see things this way, that if whatever thing we do wherever we are, contributing to the broader good of the community, is our part of fulfilling our existence on the planet Earth, which should be usefulness, not causing pain on others, then we are succeeding. Because success is relative. It should not be benchmarked on materialism, as is the current case today. It should be benchmarked on the number of lives touched positively, on the mothers who can put food on the table as a result of our actions in whatever thing we do, as a result of ensuring that we are helping you to become better versions of the solutions that we need today. That is what is important. And so those aspects are what always motivate me. And that is why when I saw my mother unable to harvest because there was a drought and we had crop failure, unable to put food on the table, when we went hungry, when we started begging from our neighbors, then it dawned on me that something needs to be done. And instead of asking the question, who should do it, I said, what should I do? And that's why then I took upon me to give my best in studying and giving my best in doing what I can do to provide answers to that. And that's how it's all about. So the nutshell of it all is our living on earth should be manifested through usefulness, purposeful usefulness in whatever thing that we do, because that is the most important thing that we should always be able to do as we move forward.
Wow. You know, you just answered a question that I had somebody asked, a prominent person globally asked, that what is the purpose of life? Because what you just mentioned now, you've actually broken down the purpose of life, being useful. Somebody was
Exactly.
asked that question and fumble around and answer. You not really get what they are trying to say. But I mean, I appreciate that, that clarity, that the purposeful
Thank you.
question.
And thank you for
Is
asking that question. I mean, it's a question that a lot of people don't know. They
Yes.
actually, a lot of people actually do not know that your existence is for a reason. And that reason is purposeful usefulness. You must be useful. And the usefulness is not for someone to give it to you, it's for you to do it. People can always support you to do something, but you must ask, what am I doing that touches people's lives positively? So if you are not doing that, then it's never late. You say, from now, I have to start doing it. And I think once everybody answer that question, what is my usefulness to the community? And we start playing our part, then the sum total of the collective effort will become so big that it will then turbocharge solutions that will then turn all the challenges into opportunities.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that answer. Yes. So
Great.
the final question is related to that, and we have to appreciate that part of being useful is going the extra mile. You cannot do the ordinary then to be useful, as you've said it. So, going the extra mile, is not always appreciated. Yes, you'll face difficulties. You'll face
Right.
discouragements and all these things when you try to go the extra mile. How do you remain consistent? I mean, yes, how do you remain consistent and not be discouraged when you try to go the extra mile and maybe you are misunderstood and not you're not encouraged basically. Yeah, so how do you remain consistent on that journey of purpose and going the extra mile, which is something very few people do actually, going the extra mile.
Yeah, thanks again, Bob. The reality is this: if you want to be useful, which builds back on my last answer, be ready to be misunderstood, because the process of usefulness brings innovations and bring ideas. And if you want to do things differently to address challenges, people will misunderstand you and people will say things or try to push you around and try to do that. You should be prepared for that, because The reality is that life is not a place of ease. And anytime you want to address a challenge that deviates from the norm of complaining, that deviates from the norm of what everybody is used to, you want to, there is bound to be that resistance. But consistency becomes important, because if you know what you want, and you have a very clear unborrowed vision, where you want to go, what you want to do, and why you are doing it, it becomes very, very difficult. Like I said earlier, it's an inspired and passionate human being is very, very difficult to stop a passionate human being, because he or she will find an alternative way to still achieve the same result, regardless of how that is. And so what keeps me going and being consistent is that there is only one pathway to making a difference in people's lives, and that pathway is to provide solutions to the challenges they face. 60 years ago, the challenge of food insecurity in Africa was discussed the same way it is discussed today. So people are still looking for solutions to put food on the table, to reduce post-harvest losses. People are looking for solutions to reduce indoor pollution that is causing over 700,000 deaths in the continent of Africa. So we have to keep the motive the same, to find solutions to reverse indoor pollution, to reverse post-harvest losses. And so that consistency of solutions must be there. Are you going to face obstacles on the way? Of course, that's part of the process. Part of the process is also facing obstacles. But what it teaches you is to recalibrate very quickly. And so when you have that in mind, that at least it's not a linear or a straight line to get solutions to problems, then it becomes very easy, because regardless of what you face in terms of obstacles, in terms of bridges on the way, you always recalibrate to keep pushing until you find a solution. And another aspect is, even when your solution is found, the uptake of that solution become another problem, because people do not believe sometimes even in the solutions that are provided to them. You start to, so it's continuous recalibration. But what inspires one to keep going is that at the end of the day, that mother in the community will then be able to use briquettes. The mother in the community can then be able to substitute charcoal by using burgers. You can then use a clean cook stove. You can then use a solar dryer or a solar fridge. All those aspects added up together are what keeps one going. And it boils down to one word: purpose, which is supposed to be our usefulness to the community. And without the usefulness, we need to be consistent, persistent, and at the same time self-discipline. Because without self-discipline, regardless, we will want convenience. And unfortunately, convenience and progress do not go together. They are enemies. Comfort and progress do not go together. They are enemies. And if you want comfort, forget progress. Progress is about consistency, persistency. It's about pain. If you don't put effort, you will not achieve. And some people call it pain. I actually call effort an opportunity, because when you put effort combined with passion, geared towards an unborrowed vision, and purposefully driven, you address so many issues that many people have not done.
Wow. Hey, wow. I mean, those are really out of the box kind of answers. I mean, really, really very valuable answers. And I just hope that this segment, as I've said, that it can be put somewhere so that people can really consistently listen to this and change their thinking, change their minds, and in that way then change the way they act. So
Excellent.
I think thank you very much for the opportunity to ask you some questions, and I hand over the
baton. Thank you very much, Bob. I mean, thanks for the question. I really appreciate it, and thanks for your ideas. We are at 1 hour 23 minutes, but the conversation has just been going, and it's so exciting that time goes without one feeling. So I think now we will have to run up, and then I would like to get your last word.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so my last word is that thank you very much, first of all, for hosting me in the spot, and I'd say that Africa is a continent that, from the way it is, from the way it was, it was created, is a continent of opportunities.
Right.
What we are trying to do is to help each of us, to encourage ourselves, to encourage those out there who are friends of Africa to come and join hands in tapping into these opportunities that are within Africa, and in so doing, then move the continent forward. We cannot have a continent that is the most resourced of any other across the globe, holding last by so many, by so many variables or by so many. I mean, it is holding last by a big margin, and this is not normal. So I think that will be my last word. Africa is a place of opportunity, and we need most of us to come to that realization and to then tap into the solutions process, realizing that out of the solutions that we offer, then that is how we turn this opportunity. We actually harvest these opportunities which are already there. That will be my last
Excellent.
word.
Maybe let me just push you a little bit on that. I know it was your last word. So,
Yes.
what is your message to our young girls and boys of the continent who are watching this, or who are to watch this when it re-airs again? What's your message to them?
I'll tell them that
Some of them feel that they have reached the end. They don't see these opportunities that we keep mentioning. They feel that, oh no, life is so worse that this is not what they ever expected, and that is a misnomer. What can you tell them?
the first question I ask them is, are you breathing and are you healthy? That is the first
Excellent.
question. If you're breathing, if you're healthy,
That one
there
is a
should be
point.
yes. I mean, that should already be you have within yourself the biggest investment that anybody can ever have. You are alive and you're healthy. The next thing is to realize that what you just said now, that we have to appreciate that we are living in a globe. We are living in a world, and the world is not a place of ease. I mean,
Correct.
troubles are everywhere, and nobody will really tell you that they're in a place where they are not challenged or they're not facing some difficulty here and there. So the world is not a place of ease or comfort. It is actually a place of responsibilities, taking responsibilities for your actions and achieving, actually being of value, as you say, being
Right.
of value. That is my encouragement to them. That take heart. It is normal. Things being difficult is the norm actually on the globe. But the good thing is you have what it takes to be of value, and all it will take is for you to come to that realization and gather yourself and decide within your mind to be a solutions provider going forward and take advantage of opportunities that come your way. For example, this discussion today, these opportunities that has come your way. The InnovativeVolunteerism platform and many other platforms across the continent that provide the channel or the conduit within which you can access your talents and become a solution provider. Those are opportunities that they should take.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that dose of advice. And I believe that those who are listening, this advice is not only for the youngsters, but it's both for the all who are young at heart and for everyone. Thank you very much, Bob. And to the viewers out there, it's been a great pleasure having this conversation. And I hope that you did enjoy it. Please, we will be having a lot of these conversations going forward so that at least we can break down the issues, especially of the challenges that are facing Africa and the entire world, and how we can turn every challenge into an opportunity. Because as we know, we are the solutions that we have been waiting for. Until then, it's been a great pleasure, and please, next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Nice.